Hey guys, it's been a while. We haven't done any discussions or anything on this channel. Things have been really busy here, and busy in the news in general. So we're back doing some podcasts, and we're starting today. And today's topic is going to be housing, and we're here with a member of the team, and his name is.
Hey guys, I'm a team member here at Authentic Mission, and we actually thought about this idea of making a podcast about certain situations and topics going on in the world, or just different opinions that other people may have. So, yeah, we're gonna start it today.
Cool. And today's topic is kind of personal to another member on the team, but we're not, for some purposes, some names will be changed and so on. But the topic and the situation is very real. And also, it's kind of not really being talked about, surprisingly, in the media, which is interesting. It was mentioned once, but today we're going to talk about housing. And there's a new national strategy on housing proposed by the Liberals, and that's a housing bill of rights, and they want to put housing on the same plane as medical situations here in Canada.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they want to put it on the same topic as medical stuff in Canada. They want to make housing a human right.
Well, yeah, obviously, I think that's the best idea. You know, is that a bad thing? Good or bad thing?
The idea is good, and the Conservatives posted it a while ago, but the problem is, if you look at the plan, the Liberals, like, most of the money will not be given out until a year before the next election, I believe it is, and then most of the work will be done once they get elected again. They actually, to complete this whole plan, because they gave it a 10-year timeline, they proposed that it's going to take 10 years to spend $40 billion.
So they're gonna, how are they gonna, like, they're just gonna give houses to everybody?
Well, they want to repair 30,000 units, current standing housing units, like in Elliott Lake, they might have Elliott Lake Township housing. They might want to.
That'd be a bad place to live if you think.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a town full of drug users.
Yeah. Well, see, housing does tend to bring with it some a crime element, because it's for people that can't afford housing in the regular market. Maybe they're on disability, maybe they're on welfare, or in Ontario it's called Ontario Works. So, not that I'm judging anything that anybody does in their house, but there is a crime element of drugs with housing, and what do you call it? Like, marijuana, fine, okay, or cannabis, fine, whatever. But there's also, like, crack cocaine, blah blah blah, and a lot of people are against all of that and the crime that it does bring. So you're right there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd feel safe if I knock on my neighbor's door for maybe some sugar, and I see them putting a needle in their arm. I wouldn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm. See, as a libertarian, I sit there and I say, well, people have the right to do what they want to do with their own body, and if that includes doing drugs, then fine. Some libertarians believe in making all drugs within the earth, like cocaine and all that. They want to make it legal, like they did in some country, I can't remember. So, as a libertarian, I'm okay with whatever people want to do in their house, but there's also kids connected to housing and families, right? Kids don't
Yeah.
need to be finding needles outside
Yeah.
the neighborhood.
Like, I understand that some people may think that's like a good thing to legalize all those drugs, but I don't know. I just there's something about it that just makes me think it's not okay.
Yeah, well, even as a libertarian, when I've talked to libertarian friends of mine, and they're saying just legalize the heroin, legalize whatever, and that will cut down on the suicide rate, or not the suicide rate, but the overdose rate, accidental overdose and stuff. But even me, I'm like, okay, cannabis, fine, but again, cocaine, heroin. Ugh.
Yeah, like marijuana points you down a road of kind of like a relaxed, positive, like a no bumps in the road. But cocaine, heroin, I find
Mm-hmm.
just goes straight down to this road that has all these shitty trees with no leaves on, bunch of bumps and cracks in the road, you know?
Yeah. And like, do I think there needs to be some stronger housing? Sure. But what about that crime element of it? What about outside of that? What about like the fact that $40 billion, or wait, was it billion or million? Whatever. Either way, it's still expensive. I don't think Canada can afford to spend that amount of money. We're already in a deficit. NAFTA's at risk. There's so many things. Like, it's not just about housing. It's about jobs. It's about crime. It's about like money. Like, if we lose NAFTA, I don't know enough about it to say if it helps us or hurts us. I don't know. But where would we get that $40 billion to spend, right?
The government makes the money, for sure. Guaranteed the government makes the money.
Mm-hmm.
They have
Makes
money
money.
printers.
Steals money. I mean,
Well, if you think about it, where is the money made? Like, where is the dollar, like, where are the dollar bills made? All that shit. Obviously, someone's got to be making it.
mm-hmm. And, as Bitcoin and Ethereum come in, does it really matter where the money gets made? Because now it's all becoming digital currency. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. But, like, yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That fucks with your mind a little bit. Excuse my language.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, housing, everybody thinks everything is just about housing or just about medical care or just about... Everything is connected. There's no... Medical care affects money. Money affects taxes. Taxes, which taxation is theft, but that's another topic for another time. Everything is connected, and I just don't, as much as I want to see more affordable housing units for people with disabilities, I don't think we can afford to do it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
About this whole housing situation?
Yeah, like, do you think, given NAFTA, given the crime side of it, given everything I just said, do you think we can afford it, or do you think...
I think everything is affordable if it comes down to the government doing it.
Yeah, but that means more control.
Definitely, but we're already headed down that road, so...
So what? Can't beat them. Can't beat them.
Can't beat the government. Might as well just roll with it.
Oh, we can beat the government though, but not in a violent way. But think about it. Beat them with our vote. Let's shift culture.
Yeah.
We don't like. Do I think we need more housing? Yes, absolutely. But I think it should be up to the communities to come up with a plan to help their fellow brothers and sisters with housing, instead of the federal government stepping in and making a housing bill of rights, which, by the way, they haven't given much detail. They just said everyone should have the right to affordable housing like we do medical care. First of all, that costs a lot of money, but where I just don't understand where, like, they want to announce a big thing like housing, but where's the Bill of Rights that they're talking about? How are everyday landlords not connected to, say, Elliott Lake Housing or Sudbury Housing or whatever?
Yeah.
How would housing, a housing Bill of Rights affect the everyday landlord? In terms of upkeep and stuff like that.
I think landlords aren't even going to be a thing then. Well, like if if they're saying housing is for everybody and stuff, then there's going to be no need to rent your places or something. Right?
So you're saying, that's interesting actually, because think about it.
Well,
You're saying that there won't be any private landlords anymore?
well, if the government's saying like, oh, we're going to give everybody free housing now, or not free housing, but affordable housing. What, like, are there going to be actual landlords now either selling a house that they own or renting out a room or?
That's a good point. You know what? One day we should go back to that specific part of it.
And do you think they're gonna like I don't know, I still think not everybody should be allowed to access such things like that, like
Like people with disabilities, yes.
Yeah, but like I don't know. I just don't think
You're saying not the like
something about it is just
not the family, like leave the families out of it kind of thing, like the family take care of itself versus like a single parent or a person.
Yeah, like if you make too much money, it all depends on how much you make, I would think. There's some people who make a lot of money as to the one, I don't know, DSP.
That's interesting. One day we'll have to go back and like look at like if they've announced what the housing bill of rights would look like. That'd be interesting. They want to consider housing a actual human right.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of human right though and housing, see guys, it's all connected. We have a member of the team that lives in affordable housing. You know, I know, but the independent living place that he lives at wants to.
Alright, we just had some technical difficulties, but we just fixed it right up. Continuing to what you were saying.
So, speaking of housing, like we were talking about housing and who should be able to access it and who shouldn't. Now, you basically clarified, I believe, that you're saying leave the families out of it, let the families take care of themselves, but the single parent for a little while, you know, like a person with disabilities. And then I mentioned our mutual friend that's a member of the team that's living in a independent living setting. Now, for those of you that don't know, independent living and the philosophy behind it is for people with disabilities or stroke victims to still be able to live as independently as they can with a little bit of assistance, like a PSW coming in, maybe helping them bathe if they're disabled, or you know, a PSW maybe helping with shower, but you have to direct your care. You can't just okay, you know what to do, you know what I mean, because that's more of a hospital kind of thing. But now recently in Ontario, the ministry is moving away from the independent living philosophy due to our latest census and the rising baby boomers age and the people like they're living to 100 and stuff like that, or people with dementia and all that sort of thing. Now, again, this goes to something that drives me nuts and drives this member nuts, is the fact that like not that we shouldn't help our seniors or people with disabilities or whatever, but the independent living format cannot be replaced for more of a hospital living format, and like, you do this and you do that with your bookings, you have to stick to them. And whereas independent living means, like, if I don't want to shower one day in the morning, but I can shower later when my back's not bothering me or whatever, for me, for example, or for this member too, like, the fact of the matter is that due to the ministry changes, certain places are feeling pressure and they have to try and change, right? Now, I'm just saying personally how I would want to live, which is the independent living format, and that's what this member wants to do, and he refused to come on this discussion with us, but due to anxiety and stuff. But now that this member's been speaking up, we're going to try and convince him one day to come out and talk to us. But now that he's been speaking up about these changes that the government wants to do, which, by the way, people, would be less independent living format and more hospital format, and you stick to your stuff and you stick to your schedule as is, and you're put more into what we used to have, which is an institution format, and those were just recently closed. So it's almost like the government wants to restart them, but sneak them in with another way, because they were closed. There was abuse, there was people placed in there that weren't supposed to be placed in there, stuff like that. And there's a very famous old movie called My Name is Jonah. Go look it up, and that will explain what these institutions were. But yeah, like, we have a friend of ours that's been speaking up against losing the independent living format, and now the place that this person lives at is very upset, very pissed off, and they are trying to kick our friend out. And is healthcare too expensive? Yes, but to cut corners and sneak in the independent living, the institution format, just drives me nuts. And you know the guy, and you know some stress that he's been going through because of it. Like, what do you think? Do you think we're losing the independent living format from what it was even, say, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, versus now?
I was 10 years old 8 years ago. So I'm not really, like, from what you've told me, it really seems like that. But then again, I think it's been the same here for a while, considering, like, stories that I've heard from our friend, and the old apartment he used to live in. Those kind of stories make me think that this place has been being run like totally the same all these years. They're just bad at their jobs, and they're running this place stupidly. It's bullshit. Now,
but see, that's where I'm on the fence with this housing bill. Again, it comes back to that, because we need an independent living format, so more housing to that format versus the Ministry of Health format that they want to implement, which, by the way, is something called Thrive at Home. You guys can Google it. They want to reduce people's hours from 180 that people can be eligible for a month for personal care to, they want to reduce it down to 120. So, yikes. We need more. As a libertarian, I'm going to say we need more independent living formats, but we need them community based, built by the group, for the group. Like, if me and you we're both disabled, and let's say we lived in Hamilton, okay, and there was 10 people, or like, no, let's be more realistic, 30 people, and we wanted an independent living kind of format house, then we should be able legally to fundraise, build our own building, make a set of rules, but not have to follow all necessary ministry standards. What do you think?
I totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm. I look at your generation and my generation, and it feels like, not you, because you've been a good working member of the team, but other people were always like, give me, and don't want to put in the work for it, whereas you work 2 jobs, and it feels like a big chunk of your generation is just like, they want what mommy and daddy had, but for less.
Exactly.
Mm. Sometimes when you've been working, like, somebody will, I'll hear you tell me a story about somebody messaging and like complaining about something, but yet their hours at work, let's say, are less strenuous than yours, and you don't even bitch about it. So
yeah, so this guy messages me saying, "Oh, life is so hard, I'm working 8 hours this week." And I said, "Dude, I'm putting in at least 56, and I'm not sitting here talking to you about that. It's life, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want to work 8 hours a week, then don't work 8 hours a week. That's your problem. But unless you don't put in the work, you're not going to go very far. Not going to be with your parents forever, you know?"
Yeah. Well,
there's definitely, I don't know. This generation is like probably 80% of the people just not caring about their life, either turning to drugs or just not doing anything. And then there's the other 30% that actually, or 20% that actually like go out there and try to make a living.
I mean, the only group of your generation that has a right to bitch, quite frankly, would be the college students that got screwed over because of the Ontario government and their lack of wanting to communicate, in my opinion, with the union. Not that I believe there should necessarily be unions, but they're there, so why didn't the government meet with them?
Yeah.
Your generation had a right to bitch about that strike, but then they also don't have a right. There's one person that I know that bitched about, oh my god, now I gotta do my homework.
Yeah. I keep hearing all these people on, like, when I'm taking the bus to work, I keep hearing all these people talk about the college thing. And this guy was talking, he said the teacher asked him, did I do all the work? And he said, of course, I didn't do the work. Did you teach while you were gone and stuff? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So you pretty much chose not to, like,
do the work.
Not to do the work, not to pay attention to schooling. So really that's his fault.
Yeah.
But it's not fair for them to have gone through that.
Well, I mean, my point is, no, it's not fair, but why did you guys not, like, not you, but I mean, those group of people that were in the strike, or were affected by the strike, why didn't you guys sit there and say, you know what, even if this strike lasts 2 weeks, I'm going to do my homework, like, now, for 5 hours a day, for a couple days, treat it like school, so you don't get out of that loop, and then you're not rushing to do as much homework.
Yeah. Like, just keep
like-
up with it.
Yep, we were actually supposed to do a film, which we might do soon, and there was somebody that was going to help us with that, and they decided not to come because they had to do their schoolwork, where they had 5 weeks. That friend had 5 weeks to do it.
To be fair, that friend was waiting on a cello that was ordered online, so...
Oh, that part? Okay, I didn't know, so I'll shut up about that part,
But, yeah, definitely that college strike really kind of divided two people, like the hardworking people that just didn't care, and the people who just dropped out and took the tuition and waited for next year, which I can understand from both sides, you know? The people that don't want to wait another year, and the people that are just fine with it, plus they already learned like half the semester anyways, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I personally, if I was going to school and that happened, I would have dropped out right away and not had to worry about getting my money back. And then you restart the course in, say, January, or you restart it exactly a year from then. Take a year off, save money, because things are not cheap.
Yeah.
And work. Like, I personally don't believe in rushing into school right after high school, because I did that, and by my second year, I wasn't really interested. I wanted to find myself. I wanted to focus on my artwork. Now, did I do that? No. I listened to other people's opinions, which was my choice, and I tried to go to school, and I just ended up failing because I didn't care.
Yeah.
I wasn't into it. So,
like, for somebody that's going through that right now, I was torn between choosing whether or not to just go to school right after high school or wait a year, because you really get thrown off schedule, right? And like, your living just totally changes. Like, for me, I do night shifts along with working here at Authentic Mission, and it's just my whole lifestyle has changed, and it's pretty terrifying to try and switch all that back in September, in September.
well, I mean, I was talking to somebody else about this today, and like about school. And personally, I'm not saying don't go to school, but if you're not partying, which you're not, you didn't do what some people tend to do. You're not taking a year off and going on a year-long bender and saying, I'm finding myself. You're working. So personally, given the fact that the job market is changing and stuff, I mean, you know, there's no mad rush. Now, I'm not saying take 5 years off, 2 years. I'm not even saying that. Your time is your time, but I'm just saying, like, there's nothing wrong with slowly getting back into the swing of things, right? As long as you're not doing it 5 years from now, you're like, I'm still thinking. That's the. I mean, for me, 2 years would be a cutoff, but that's just me. Because minimum wage is going up, things are going to be more expensive, and if you want to, like, if anybody wants to find themselves, what's the rush in doing that? What's the rush in trying to not find yourself? You know what I mean? Because if you don't find yourself and you just go back to things just because you think that's what the world expects, then who are you serving? Are you working as your best self if you're truly just not happy, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, you got plenty of time to figure that stuff out, but for me, again, everything in life is all connected, because whether it be circumstantial, weird, cosmic, something, like, I'll give you something cosmic. just to explain what I mean about stuff happening all in one weird sense. We are in the midst of, again, NAFTA negotiation. We are in the midst of promise of spending by the Liberals. We are in the midst of uncertainty with jobs because minimum wage. Like, look at where we are in a restaurant that's been around for 50 years, but he sold it because of the rising minimum wage. I mean, let's face it. By the time you find yourself and maybe move on from the team, I say maybe because there's always a home for you to create whatever way you want to do your art, which I'm not going to put you on the spot and say what it is on this podcast.
I'm an artist.
Yes, you're an artist, but I'm not going to put you on the spot and say what. So, it's just, there's so many ways to look at things,
Yeah. There's I'm sitting here thinking about different ways of different types of people who go on after high school.
Yeah.
Different types of people who go into housing. Like, I'm sitting here thinking about so many different ways of talking about it.
Yeah.
Because I believe there's so many different sides to each story,
Yeah.
That it's just...
Well, I mean, let's look at how housing is connected to the school thing, right? The Bank of Canada just raised the interest rate, and they just said how housing is so unaffordable. So what do? You raise the interest rate, and now you made it harder to buy, and they want to make people do a stress test. So again, that's, in my opinion, you hit the nail on the head without even knowing it, because it's going to make things so unaffordable for people to, even if they get a job, that single people are going to need housing, and the landlord that buys a piece of property just to make a little extra income isn't going to be doing that, because all of housing has just increased in Canada. Now we got people living in housing, in my opinion, that don't need it.
Yeah.
See how it's connected? Even students, right? If they go to school and they do their work for, say, 2-year or 3-year course, and then they get out into the workforce and can't find a job because they're brand new, and the cost of minimum wage even went up. Whoever takes over, or whatever, whenever you do move on, right? That's once minimum wage goes up to $15 an hour, and I was told my funding for what we do isn't going to be increased, that's 20% of my funding gone within the year.
Yeah.
So again, it's all connected.
Everything's connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this should be the end of our first podcast, or what?
Yeah. Well, I think with this one we wanted to talk about housing, but we also wanted to set up a format where we're going to try and show you his perspective and my perspective, and it might kind of seem like it jumps, but we're trying to show how everything is connected. Because, again, we talked about your generation, we talked about jobs, we talked about housing. You hit the nail on the head.
One thing I really like conversating about is my perspective versus yours for certain topics and situations.
Yeah.
In this world.
So I think the next one, should we give the audience a little bit of what the next one might be?
Oh, yeah, it's Christmas. We're a little giving.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I was thinking of talking about the fact of minimum wage going up.
Yeah.
And how your generation, no offense, doesn't seem to get it. You have.
Oh, really?
In my
I'm
opinion.
just kidding.
In my opinion, you understand it, I think, but I'd like to talk about how your generation sees it and how I see it, and I've already made it clear on this channel, I hate it.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Well, yeah.
Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out.